Hey everybody, really excited today to talk to Amy Volas about sales recruiting. Amy runs a company called Avenue Talent Partners and is going to talk today about closing $100 million in enterprise deals. Amy, that's a large number.
It is, and I'm really proud of it. So thank you for having me. Hi, everybody.
Awesome. Yeah, really pumped. Selfishly, I was just telling you before, I want to know this. I want to know all this stuff too, right? So I think from reading your content and following you on LinkedIn for some time, I'm really excited to see what you have to say. So for folks that don't know you, can you maybe just do a quick intro?
Sure. So sales is my first business love. I have been in it for over 20 years, and I grew up in the world of coming from the place where you were just thrown into it and it was a sink or swim situation. And it's always been enterprise sales for me. So I've been my own SDR. I've been my own researcher. I've been my own marketer. I've been my own account manager, all of the things I've done inside of large companies like Yahoo, as well as small startups at the time, like, excuse me, Indeed, that exited. And so that leads me to my second business love of startups. And 4 years ago, I started Avenue Talent Partners to help startups get their sales recruiting strategies and efforts right the first time to avoid the nasty stuff that can happen when you get it wrong. So that's me.
I love it. I think the big thing, when you get a bad hire or you build the wrong team or it doesn't work, it's like 6 month minimum of damage, right?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
you have to rebuild it.
Yes.
So, speaking from experience here, it was like 6 months minimum. I was like, wow, this sucks. Anyways, okay. So $100 million in enterprise deals. So first and foremost, like, what is an enterprise deal? Like, how do you define it?
So that's something that a lot of people struggle with. And it's really something that I've written a lot about because what I'm finding that's happening is people are trying to go upstream, right? So I've been in SMB and I want to be in enterprise sales, but it's really more like a mid-market thing, or it's like SMB heavy because people want to start spending more money with you. So I think enterprise sales is something that you can't really define in a hard and fast way of what the dollars are. I've seen enterprise sales be with companies that aren't just Fortune brands, but they're companies that are emerging that have really complex deals that you need to think about. And so for me, enterprise sales and what it actually is around the complexity of the task at hand, coupled with the mindset that it requires the person going through the buyer journey from the seller side, what they bring to the table and what's required of them to push a long sales cycle through. So it's about the complexity of the deal, dollar size, sure, but also how long it takes and what needs to be done to not just get a seat at the table, but keep that seat at the table for the long haul, because these aren't transactional churn and burn deals.
Absolutely. So I guess like yeah, that's a great definition. I think a lot of people first and foremost think they're doing an enterprise deal when they're doing a mid market. I actually talked to my co-founders. I had to correct them. I was like, hey guys, we're moving up market, but that goes from like very small businesses to kind of small businesses to like maybe mid market, right? And so even if that, but anyways, and they were like enterprise. I'm like, no, that we're not selling to enterprises
Yeah.
here. Let's not kid ourselves. But anyways, how do you get like what's the framework? I mean, you have a really awesome blog post on this. It goes really into details. I'd love to just kind of scratch the surface on kind of that topic. But I guess like, when do you get started here?
So I think if we're talking about getting started and you've already been in business, your marketplace is going to speak louder than anything that you and I will ever be able to say here, any blog post I've ever written, anything that I would ever say. So there's a reason for you to think about enterprise, or there's a reason why you're in enterprise. When you're tackling it as a new rep or a company thinking about getting into it, I find that your marketplace is going to speak louder than all of us combined, meaning that what's happening in your business today? Who are those buyers that are spending more money with you? What's the complexity of that deal? What are the things that they're telling you? Because I hope, and here's the disclaimer, and it goes back to your original comment of when I've made the wrong hire, it cost me 6 months. This is what I say to people getting into enterprise sales. You have one real big shot of getting a seat at that table. And if you screw it up, you're in trouble, right? Like that, good luck trying to get back in. And so when you think about your question of, well, what does that actually look like and what do you need to do? I find that if you already have companies that are looking and feeling and acting like an enterprise company, why are they buying from you? What's going on in their business? And then really paying attention to that, what I call the space in between of the things that are being shared, and taking that and looking at the total addressable market along that same line of who is that customer? What is that vertical? What is that industry? What is that location? And picking the top players. It's like lookalike modeling, right? But for sales,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
same thing.
I love it. That's something as a marketer I could totally understand. It's like, hey, here's all the things that people are saying. I want to find more folks like that, right? And I like the fact that you're kind of in your content you talk about like know your buyer's problem better than they know it, right? Like what is the thing that they're kind of doing, and it sounds like it comes from like reading in between the lines. Can we talk through that a little bit?
We can, and it's funny. There's right before you and I got on to this call, I was in my in-mail, and there is this lovely gem of a fellow. He's 25 years old. I know that because he told me, and he's at IBM, and he's like, my boss is coming down my street real hot about time kills deals and getting this in quickly. And I'm dealing with these big Goliath companies, and I don't know what to do, Amy, because I'm reading your stuff and you talk about quality versus quantity. And I said, here's the thing that you need to do first. Quality will always win. I'm of that ilk. But the other piece to this is think about your pipeline. So in enterprise sales, the journey can be 6 months to 18 to 24 months plus to get a deal in place. And so when you think about that, it's about breaking apart the small problems of what's going to get me from this place to this place in terms of being really relevant to my buyer. Because it's about, in enterprise sales, the studies show you have on average 6.8 buyers in the process. Each one of those people has a different problem. They have a different goal. And it's not always about problems. It could be goals or what they're there to do. And so when I think about making them be a hero, because that's really what the best salespeople do. When I think about that, it's about where do they hang out? Where do they go to network, learn, and grow? I'm going to go to the same places. I'm going to have conversations that really celebrate the power of discovery, that have nothing to do with me selling anything, but have everything to do with, what are you talking about? What are others like you talking about? What are other executives talking about? What's your annual report talking about? What's G2 Crowd telling me about you? What's Owler telling me about you? What are you tweeting about? What's the content that you're consuming and sharing with others? And it's about immersing yourself into that and being an active participant, not being a drive-by shooter in terms of like, hey, I just want to see what you're talking about, and then I'm going to regurgitate it back to you. And it's going to be super icky and very surfacey. It's more like, what are the things that are really germane to your industry, to your vertical, to the growth and the health of your company, that other companies like you are talking about as well? You may not realize that. And I want to take a kernel of the not so obvious stuff and bring it back to you in a really monumental way that's going to make you stop and go, And that was the advice that I gave this guy of, you have a lot of work to do about creating this pipeline for the short, near, and long term. And how you do that is by all of this that I just described.
Gotcha. I love it. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think in your content, you talk about like getting deep inside their world, right? So one of it's like knowing what they're sharing and all that stuff. But what are other things you can do to again get inside deep in their world?
So it's about the power of conversation, right? And Scott Barker from Sales Hacker just shared this, and I was like, that is the most amazing thing. And I know now everyone's going to go and do it, and by the time people see this, it'll be old hat. But he was talking about having discovery conversations and asking people about what they're reading. So what's a book that you've loved? What did you get out of that? And to collect this library of sorts and to read all of those books, or to get the Cliff Notes version of those books. And be able to take back the common themes of, by asking that question and finding out what people are reading and then consuming that information yourself, being able to weave together common threads of information that will be super impactful, and taking that back inside. He suggested, if you haven't seen his LinkedIn post, everybody should go and find it, about what the messaging was of, hey, these are books that other people like you have read, and I'm being really gross in the messaging here, don't say it like this, but that's the takeaway of other people like you care about this. This is what they've read. I've read the same thing. Here was a key takeaway that have helped others like you do X, Y, and Z. I have some ideas that I'd be happy to share with you. Let me know when you want to talk about this. And people respond well. It's like you did your homework, you took the time, you were thoughtful. And somebody in Scott's comments said, if you really want to stand out and shine, send them a copy of your favorite book and highlight it for them with a really lovely note that talks about those key takeaways. So many things you can do there just with knowledge that's not about you selling something. It's about you helping them, but you're standing out as an authoritative figure in their marketplace that's going to be there to help them. And you know what you're talking about. You're not just there slinging product.
I love that. We I have a digital marketing agency called Web Profits. We sell to CMOs and VP of marketing, and we dug in. I've been in that role. The biggest problem is like convincing the CEO, CFO for budget allocation for the year, right? Whatever it is, you got to justify this, right? And there's always a question that gets asked, and throws a wrench in everything. So we actually started sending, when we do outbound sales, started sending people books that were related to like not marketing, like finance. And it was like, hey, just read chapter 3, and this is going to help you get the budget you need for everything you're doing, head count, whatever. And we didn't even ask for anything. We just threw our business card here in the middle of it. And it was amazing because people were like immediately high trust, right? Like, me. What other way to kind of say that you know somebody than like showing that you actually can solve their problem that they don't even know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and if you're doing handwritten stuff, by the way, here's a little trick that I do. So I use a company called Moo, and I had cards designed just like, just the one-sided card, and on the other side is my logo. But on that card, all it has is my logo up top and my contact information on the bottom of who I am. And whatever I'm writing there, I want to make it pack a punch because they're going to save it. If I'm giving you something really powerful, you're going to save that. So if it's a key takeaway from a book, if it's a key piece of insight, if it's a book that I would recommend reading, or something that I've gotten out of something that's really helped me, I want to mark it down there and call to it, because they're going to hang on to that so that they don't forget about it. That's a great way to stay top of mind.
Yeah, I love that. And you're kind of using multiple touches, but you're using one touch to kind of anchor on the other ones, right? Or others anchor on the main touch or whatnot. I love that.
Yeah.
And you're incorporating personalization and into it. So I love that. I mean, I think if you can say the right words, this could be in my equivalent, like, when you get like a thank you card or a Christmas card, you put it on your fridge. It's there. You always see it. It's kind of back of mind, but there all the time. This could go on the fridge, right? Like this could go on your desk in your office. And so it can actually make a good impact and get multiple touches. But I want to dive into a little bit different topic. You mentioned earlier 6.8 decision makers, I believe, on average deal, an enterprise deal. Can we talk about like mapping out that organization? How do you kind of engage with the decision maker? Like, let's just dive into that, because I think that's where I get stuck. Like that's where I think a lot of people get stuck.
Yep. So I was always a top down, bottom up kind of gal. So I start where the authority and the budget, and I'm not just talking about BANT here. So anybody that's been through a bunch of sales things like I have, I'm not throwing out any one sales philosophy or the other. I take little bits and pieces from everybody and make it my own. But I want to think about where the true P&L ownership sits, because if you're engaged with them and they see the value and the need for what it is that you're bringing their way, everything else becomes a heck of a lot easier, right? So I also want the people around the process that they're going to engage in. I don't want to isolate anybody. So the way that I do that, first and foremost, is to think about the TAM, right? So we talked about that. And then the actual mapping out of what that looks like. We live in a world that is digital and everything is at our fingertips. So you've got tools like Discover.org that help with that. You've got tools like LinkedIn Navigator that help with that. You've got tools like Owler, Nudge that help you get signals of what people are tweeting and talking about, so that it makes it easier to know who are the people that I need to talk to, right? I came from going through Miller Hyman training 3 times in my sales career. I still have my blue and green sheets, meaning they're these huge pieces of paper that you can put up on a wall with stickers and all sorts of fun things that help you understand, here are the people that are those 6.8 buyers that would be in the journey. What are they trying to solve for? What's important to them? Who are they? What's their contact information? Where do they live? Where do they go? What are they consuming? All of that stuff. Then I use a really critical tool when done right called a CRM system, right? We all know what those are. Information into that is just as powerful as information out of that. And that is my single source of truth. So getting everything in there makes it it's a pain in the neck up front, but it's a lot more helpful later on, because everything that I'm doing is there, and how I'm scheduling that sits and lives and starts there. And then it's about thinking along the lines of, well, what are those multiple touches? Because it's, in my opinion, the best sellers realize that you do the right work with the right people consistently. So having those 2 foundational items, and then using tools like Nudge, and I've talked about this a lot through the last couple of years. I use it all the time. It's a lazy approach for me to stay on top of what are people tweeting, what's happening inside of the company. Navigator does the same thing. I do a lot of different tools at the same time. But it's about having those signals when it's happening, at the time it's happening, to immediately engage, whether it's part of my cadence or not, so that I am top of mind, I am being helpful. If somebody else is doing something monumental in their company, and I know immediately from all the work that I did up front of that blueprint of, here's what the company looks like. Oh, this person, they just acquired this company. That's going to mean that that company projects 25% more growth than my company. What I can do can help them capture some of that market. I need to go back to the person that owns that and speak to them about creative ways that we can help them think about that. So it's about all of that organization up front. It's about understanding who those people are. We live in a world where there's a lot of movement between jobs. So I will signal who's moving in and out of jobs. That's also a really good indicator to re-engage. If you've fallen flat with somebody, if they leave, great, who's replaced them? So those are all the things of mapping out that have served me really, really well.
I love that. Yeah. I think you mentioned so many different like tools and tactics and kind of processes here, that there's not like a one-stop shop that does like everything, right?
No.
If it was, we would
We
be
wouldn't be
dealing with a
talking.
lot. Yeah, well, it would be dealing with a lot more competition, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You wouldn't. Yeah, enterprise deal would be very, very easy to achieve. Then you have to worry about more like keeping them, and that's a whole other topic. But that's awesome. I like the fact you're like, okay, there's Nudge will tell me some things. There's your CRM. There's so many things, and really what you're saying is keep a pulse on everything that's going on. It's not going to be one thing that you're going to do. I love that. So I guess
the other thing, not to interrupt, sorry. The other thing that I think is important to speak to with this is we're talking about all the new stuff, and all of this stuff also correlates to the existing stuff. So enterprise sales also has this land and expand piece that can happen, right? So what you do to get into the door is typically just where the magic starts, right? There's so much more that can happen and a lot of other opportunity that can be had. So when I think about mapping something out, it's also understanding for your existing customers, what's happening? Why are they staying with you? What are they liking about you? They get approached all the time through all of your other competitors. How do you keep a pulse on what's important to them or what's falling short, given everything else that's coming their way through the marketplace? It's noisy. And so staying close to them and keeping them as allies, and then leveraging that through references, case studies, testimonials, success stories, mutual webinars, getting on the stage together. That is a huge magnet for other people coming to you.
I love that. Yeah. So you're using this initial sale to build a relationship, and then kind of using that relationship then to kind of help expand that opportunity.
Correct. And not to jump in on you, but I thought that was important to think about that as well.
I think absolutely. I think that relationship and building that sounds like early on, right? Like, cause you build that with the social touches, the book, caring, showing, even from the beginning with the business card, right? Like I think all those little details, they start to add up, right? It goes from like, who is this person they're trying to sell me, to like, hey, it's Amy calling me. She must be saying something important, right? or kind of going from like, hey, Amy's calling, to like, she's saying something important I got to pick up. I can't miss this call.
Mm-hmm.
And hard to do, obviously, right? And it takes time, but definitely works. And I want to talk about the last thing. You mentioned this a lot in your content. And this is kind of the last section I want to explore here, because I think it's probably the piece that ties everything together is actually consulting and not selling, right? Like, so how the heck can you actually close a deal or make a deal happen when you're not actually doing the selling, you're just consulting?
So in my opinion, the selling naturally happens if you're consulting, right? So, and I know that that sounds really trite, but it's true. So, um, Mark Birch is someone that I really admire from an enterprise sales perspective. And he has a quote that I live and die by. So, good people sell lots of product, great people make lots of people or lots of customers successful. And so I think when you're doing all the things that we've talked about, right? So my mother raised me to say the squeaky wheel gets the oil. It's about being top of mind in a very relevant way and being thoughtful. And if I'm being thoughtful, and a lot of this goes back to being human, and I talk about that a lot, these are all building blocks. And it's not just one thing, it's all the things that you do in tandem together. And so if you are really being helpful to a customer and bringing really germane information, or excuse me, not germane information, but information that's germane to their business, they're automatically going to think of you when it comes time to doing what they need to do. And I'll give you an example. So when I worked at Indeed, I was employee number 20 something there. I was early on. Nobody knew who they were. And I had a 12-state enterprise territory. Nobody had ever done the job before. And I was the guinea pig. And so one of the things that we did was we would have huddles as the team grew with our boss about, well, what are the creative things that we can do to stay top of mind? And for me, we came up with this roundtable idea. And people talk about lunch and learns and roundtables and all those things, but I was like, what can we do that could make it really stand out? Because our buyers, and you're talking about like McDonald's and Walgreens and Bridgestone and huge brands, right, that people want to do business with, not just me. And all of my competitors are knocking on their same door. How do I stand out? How do I get their time? How do I ask for that? How do I earn that right to do that? And so all of the discovery that I did with them, I started listening and I started making notes of what were the common themes of the things that were keeping them up at night. And how could I be helpful versus me just saying, well, here's how Indeed can help you. How could I really be helpful? So back to this roundtable concept, I thought if I made this really exclusive thing where it wasn't a huge time suck, but it was a big enough commitment where I could really see how they were interacting together, that would be helpful. So I went with one of my clients that was tried and true to me, a big supporter of Indeed, spending a lot of money with me. I took these ideas back and said, here are the common themes. What are you seeing? And he's like, you know what? I'm seeing this one main thing, and this is what we're talking about in our company. He became my moderator. I had no more than 30 other people. I split them off into tables and in groups with subtopics to the topic. They were able to share, and then we came back and shared as a group together with my client moderating it. So it gets me even more entrenched with my current client. It gets me top of mind to everybody else without being like, I'm Indeed, here's why you need to buy it. And it gave me an opportunity to follow up with them in a really monumental way, because I also had surveys at the end of what were your key takeaways? How could we make this better? And it was something that I launched quarterly. You better believe after that, I got new business and I increased spend with existing business, because that audience was a blend of existing and new so that they could come together. But the topics had nothing to do with what I was selling, but it had everything to do with why they would want to think about my solution in the end. It was fantastic. So that is the biggest kernel of how you do something that I can impart in anybody that is watching this. And hopefully that answers your question about how you do it and what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things you touched on a little bit, but that didn't say as explicitly, I want to make sure people get this, is that everything you, in helping and consulting and being truly valuable, you actually get the word of mouth. You get
Yes.
the referral, right? Without having to ask for that referral. It's it's the best referral system possible, right? It kind of, your concept here kind of brings me back to like the how to win friends, influence people, like this, really old school sales stuff that is tried and true. I don't know. So it just really resonates with me. It's such a simple concept that, of course, hard to do in execution, but so powerful. So Amy, thank you for joining. Where can people go to find more, or where can people keep in touch?
So the same way that you and I have kept in touch, LinkedIn is probably your best way. I'm super active there. It's where I share so much information about this. So Amy Volas, I'm on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with all of you. And thank you so much for the opportunity here. It's been amazing. And I love talking about this topic. So hopefully it's been helpful for those that are paying attention. So thank you.
Awesome, Amy. Thank you again. And
You're
you guys
welcome.
have to follow her on LinkedIn. I think I've been following you for like 2 or 3 years now. Um, and it's just like amazing content, right? So like, so yeah, thank you for like amazing content, and everybody's got to go follow her.
Thank you. And can I leave you with one thing here? You mentioned old school. What I find is old is new. It always comes back. And these are the basics and fundamentals that if you do this, whether it's SMB or it's enterprise or anything, that will never, ever, ever work against you. So thank you so much.
Thanks. That's a great reminder.
You're welcome.